Hello, cheers. I'm Josh from the Wine Tastings Guide, and today I am tasting another wine from my cellar that I wanted to share a brief note on. This is a wine from the Loire Valley in France. That I had a white wine a few days ago that I recorded a video tasting about a Sauvignon, that's a Chinon Blanc from the Loire Valley. This is now a red from an appellation in the Loire Valley that is mostly produces red wine, is known for its red wine. It's called Chinon. But it's a producer that is relatively new. I, for years, have been fans of, for example, Domaine Josué from Chinon, who's one of the top names that Kermit Lynch imports, that makes many excellent Chinon, and several other producers from Chinon that I was more familiar with. This one I was turned on to by somebody a few years back, and I bought a few bottles just out of curiosity. I heard good things about it. Apparently it's produced by a gentleman who grew up in the Loire around Chinon, but made his name really first in, I think, Spanish wine elsewhere, but then eventually came back and wanted to make wine from his birthplace. And it's called Domaine de Pallus. And my understanding is, because this is not a big domain and I don't know a lot about it, but they mostly make a wine called, I think it's called Pensée de Pallus, which is their more everyday wine that they produce every year. This is the Pallus, the main wine that is a little more expensive, and it's only produced in the top years and in very small quantities. And it's hard to find in the United States because it's not a big name, but yet he's producing great wine. Now, the one thing about this wine, I bought just a few bottles, and when it was first released, I forget, it was probably back, this is the vintage 2005. I think it was probably back in 2008 or 9 or so that, I know he ages his wines for a fair amount of time, that I bought this and I tasted a bottle right off the bat, and I liked it. It had a lot of stuffing, it was very rich and deep, but I felt like it wasn't really expressing itself. It didn't have that much character or personality yet. It seemed, if I had a criticism of it, I thought it was a little too oaky. Like there was some charred oak to it that might have been obscuring some of the nuances of it. However, I've since learned that he primarily uses not new oak, but actually second-year oak that's been, other wines have been aged in already, which tends to not give as much of that intense oakiness. So maybe that was a character of the wine. I don't know. To be honest, I don't know if this upper level wine, the Pallus, if he uses that same kind of oak treatment, or if he uses new barrels. Maybe somebody can comment and tell me if they know. Anyway, this is now several years later. Again, this is the 2005, now it's 2016, so it's about 11 years from the vintage. And I'm curious to see if it's changed, if it's come along, if it's evolved a bit. And one thing I should say, for those of you who don't know, Chinon is traditionally, most of the wine made in Chinon is red. It comes primarily, although it's blended with some other grapes, from Cabernet Franc, which is obviously a less well-known cousin of Cabernet Sauvignon, which is often a featured wine in Bordeaux and California wines and other wines from various regions around the world. But Cabernet Franc is usually considered a blending wine in most regions. In most of Bordeaux and California, it's used with Merlot and Cabernet Sauvignon to add complexity and certain nuances that it adds to those wines. But this is primarily Cabernet Franc. I don't know exactly what the blend is. I'm sure there are some other Bordeaux-style varietals mixed in there, but Chinon is known for Cabernet Franc. Now, let's try a bit. I poured myself a nice big glass. Wow. It's different than how I remember it. Again, this has been several years, but the smokiness is not the first thing. The smoky kind of charred oak thing that I mentioned earlier is not the first thing that I noticed. There's a licorice and black fruit, like cassis or blackberry, that's very prominent. But it's a dark and brooding wine. It's deep and dark, definitely black fruits, and kind of almost mysterious and brooding, as I said. It's actually very nice. It's definitely different than when I tasted it when it was first released, and I'm excited to taste it because it smells really good. Mm. That's nice. I would say it's somewhere between. Now, my only criticism would be that I don't know that it feels like a traditional Chinon in all respects. There's definitely Cabernet Franc aspects. It's got the big structure and fruit of Bordeaux style wine and of other Cabernet Francs, and of a lot of Chinons have, they have good body to them and structure. It even has a little bit of that kind of green vegetal thing, and I don't mean underripe by that. It's not astringent or unripe, but it's got a little bit of that kind of green complexity to it that you find in Cabernet Franc. But I would say in terms of style, it's not like a lot of the more traditional and rustic kind of Cabernet Francs that you find from Chinon. I would say it's a little more modern, a little more, which kind of goes along with the oakiness I thought I got with the youth, but interestingly it's not as oaky as it was. That's blended in or faded away, or maybe it wasn't even oakiness that I was noticing, but it seems very deep and extracted. It's more Bordeaux or California Cabernet-like in its character. That being said, it's a delicious wine, and it's certainly got its own personality and character. Whether or not it's a traditional Chinon or not, I think that's up for your own opinion and discussion. But let me try it again and make sure. It's very good. Excellent. Again, green, but nice green, kind of herbal complexity to it, but still dense, dark. It's not overly structured. There's definitely some nice kind of velvety tannins there. There's a little bit of acidity. It's well balanced, but not overly extracted and feeling harsh or astringent or anything like that. Overall, I think it's an excellent wine. Again, I think it is towards the modern side of things in some respects, but that may be splitting hairs. I think it's not necessarily your typical Chinon, but it's an outstanding wine, and not modern in the sense of being just polished, vanilla oak kind of things that you find in a lot of newer California or Bordeaux wines. It has a lot of character and personality to it. I just don't know that it's traditional Chinon character. And for anybody but the wine geek, that would probably not bother them at all. So if you can find a bottle, I encourage it. It's a delicious wine. I do think it's benefited from age. I think it was a little more one-dimensional and a little more primary and had simple kind of charred oak flavors that were dominating it when I tasted it young. But now, after about 10, 11 years of age, not that many in bottle, probably only 7 or 8 years in bottle, it's really come around, and it's very approachable now, and it's delicious. So, cheers, until next time.